Hi. Of late, some of my videos have had a common theme. They have an anti-establishment feel to them, but it is not intentional. In the process of finding certain facts and gathering some information, there were certain facts that were not adding up, and I just presented them to you. In retrospect, I find that they do point at a certain direction, but then there's no point repressing what you think, because what you resist persists. And I want to flush it out of my system that not obsessing about what the administration, what the establishment can do. So this morning I took up a subject because the lockdown thing is still going on. That situation as far as pandemic is still there. In fact, every time I go out, which is very rare, I come back and I have a feeling that even if my throat goes sore, I feel that things should be okay. So things are still bad. So this time, all this time, you have. So I spent it in finding more about subjects that were just academic bits to me, but now they are real points of interest. So this morning I started reading about exchange rates. This was one topic that I always skipped. I thought that it was too complex and it did not align with my subject, but you just have to read it once again with a free mind, and you will realize that it's not as drab a subject as you thought it was. So anyways, I'm not going to present the text that I read as some of my personal knowledge pieces, that they are not, but there has to be some mention of how things happened, so that there is a context that is built up. Alright, so we all know how things started on economic front. If I did not have a certain commodity, I would exchange with somebody I would exchange my commodity with somebody else's, and that was barter for you. But eventually, as time went by, not everyone would have the commodity that you are looking for. Not everyone would look out for the commodity that you have. So what was decided, that okay, we needed some kind of a currency which would be acceptable to all. And what would be acceptable to all, not just in the country or in a region, but also internationally, would be certain metals. Now, metals were considered precious depending on how abundant or scarce they were in for example, gold is precious because its reserves are less, and silver is precious because its reserves are less, and even copper is quite quite a significant metal. So that is how things were. There was no ranking that this particular currency was better. This particular currency had more importance, more value in the world market. There would be a standardized system like gold. Gold would be acceptable to all, but as gold and silver and precious metals, they got rarer, they were excavated, they were utilized, and very less of its reserves were left. Paper currency was introduced that was backed by a certain amount of gold. Again, to a certain extent, this is a standardized system and was acceptable to all. Things started changing in the last century. First of all, one may wonder, or all those people who don't belong to the Western world, they may wonder, how come these high and mighty people, without consulting, without getting into a democratic system, They declared themselves to have the world currency, but that's exactly how it happened. Initially it was pound sterling, and then it was US dollar. These countries without these countries are the ones that raise questions on how administration in other countries is going on, and they had no they declare themselves to have the world currency, and they did not uh, do this in a democratic way. Nobody was asked. So pretty much like pound sterling, because Britishers were the one who had imperially ruled almost all countries. So it was obvious that people would consider their currency as the supreme currency. But then they met their match, and then US dollar in 1970s was the undisputed king, because it was Richard Nixon as the president, who was the president of US in late 1960s, and he found that more US currency was in circulation than what they could back up with gold, buy gold. So what they did, they removed the Bretton Woods system, which is known as the collapse of the Bretton Woods system, in which you have to back up your currency by a certain amount of gold. So what they introduced later on was fiat currency. It is not backed up by any metal currency. It's pretty much like your cryptocurrency. It's just piece of paper. And these days, when you're operating electronically, it's not even a piece of paper. So basically, there's no difference between a cryptocurrency and your normal currency. I made a video earlier on this particular subject. So you still find your country's currency as more reliable because you trust your government. You trust your government, and that's that. Even the government say that we accept the taxes that you give us. That's also a fiat currency. Even that's not backed up by any gold. But then that's their game. We are just participants, either on a national level or an international level or a local level. It's all their game. We are just participants. So anyways, moving on. So why was dollar was considered to be the world currency is something that only they can answer. We can just talk about the process as we say it. So there were two exchange rates that came up later on, fixed and floating. Fixed would be the one that would be pegged by any strong currency. It would be tethered, connected to any strong currency, and it would move almost parallelly, in tandem, with a certain amount of let's say currency, the certain amount of standard deviation amount that would be pegged with the strong currency of the weaker currency. So in other words, in easier terms, it is the value is fixed. You fix it you connect it with a strong currency in the forex market. The second one is floating. It depends on the demand and supply of your currency. This is again one big question. Does a weaker currency do they ever have a chance to combat strong currency? Will they ever have a greater demand in the forex market, that is the foreign exchange market? Will a small country's currency is it ever going to get strong in equal terms? The chances are very less. Anyways, in India it is floating currency. That is, it depends on the demand and supply of the rupee. That's how the value of our currency is measured. And just as expected, it has done it has depreciated in the world market, hardly ever recovered against US dollar. Now this is one currency, US dollar. They have closed all doors. The moment they think they are losing, they come up with a policy unheard of, which may be fair, which may not be fair, but fairness is not something that these people are concerned with. So it's out of the blue they come up with something without anyone consulting any country. They come up with something incredulous, just like they did away with the Bretton Woods system. They call themselves the world currency, and eventually got accepted as a world currency. Now 60% of the central bank's reserves should be in US dollar, or that's the general practice. So moving on, ours is floating, but not exactly floating. It is managed floating, which means when the rupee depreciates way too much, central bank, which is the RBI, it steps into the market and it buys rupee so that its demand stabilizes. And usually depreciation happens when we import quite a bit, increasing the demand of the other currency, and in the process we depreciate our own currency. So its demand comes down. So what the central bank, that is the RBI, would do, it would buy rupee in the forex market, foreign exchange market, so that the currency stabilizes. So people have their own ways, they have their own different, specific, unique exchange rate. Like China has loosely pegged exchange rates. That is, it usually keeps its currency valued lower than the other currency, so that their exports are cheaper. Why the exports are cheaper when the currency depreciates? Because people outside the country, your country, would get more amount in less of their own currency. So that's how it gets cheaper. And you will have to spend more amount because, for example, if your currency has depreciated, it means that you will, for a product of $1, you will have to shell out more rupees to procure that particular product. So yeah, so as I was saying, people have devised their own unique exchange rate system, like ours is managed a floating rate system. I have written certain points, and according to which, before I move on, there is a certain data I got that in 1940s, $1 was equal to 4 rupees some paise. In 60s and 70s and 80s, it was between 8 rupees and 12 rupees. In 1997, it was 33 rupees. In 2002, it was 48 rupees. In 2016, it was 66 rupees. In 2021, that's now, it is 74 rupees. So for $1, one would get 74 rupees. Or for buying $1, you will have to shell out 74 rupees. So can you see how it has slid down, how our currency has slid down? Now there's nothing exceptionally wrong in depreciation, because some of the countries like China, they intentionally devalue their currency. That is, when you devalue it, when you do it as an intentional strategy. And it is called depreciation when demand and supply forces brings your currency down. All right, so ideally what you would expect that the central bank, that is RBI, would come in, because the rupee has been one of the worst performers in Asia since last year, since last April. But nothing of the sort has happened. RBI has stopped defending rupee, our currency, almost for more than a year. And now when you have rising petrol prices, because because there is inflation, when there is depreciation of the currency. And why is that so? Why is there inflation? Because more money is in the market, which is buying less of certain goods. So the market, there is a price rise. All right, so nothing of the sort has happened. And as I said, there is nothing theoretically or nothing technically very wrong in depreciation of your rupee, except for the fact that it indicates that you have imported more and exported less. So it in some way it shows the inefficiency in your trading system, in your trading behavior, and there is more liability that your country finds itself into, because eventually you will have to, even if things are on credit, you will have to pay them back in their currency, which is going to be more, because there you will have to shell out more to make them the payments. All right, so in conclusion, I would say that this depreciation that we have seen in our currency is only going to benefit the exporters. Even though India imports a lot of intermediate products, so our import bill is also humongous, but then these days it's just exporters who are the beneficiaries of this depreciation of rupee. So for example, as I have been saying, the refined petrol exporters, they almost must have gotten this free hand to deepen their supply chains until some really substantial steps are taken by the RBI, if they are taken by the RBI, because more than a year they've been exporting, they've been going about their business without any regulatory system to check their profit margins, which is not bad. Earning a profit, having profit margins is not bad, but when it is at the cost of development of the country, then it is bad. Anyway, so here I'm not here to blame any one company, but then these are the things that the government should be more aware of. They can't feign this laid back casual attitude as though they did not pay attention to a certain issue earlier, just like how they allowed Reliance Jio to capture the complete market by giving away free cellular connections to people, and they captured the entire market, and they compressed in this process all other private players. So it was later a rule was made that you can't be giving away free cellular service for more than a certain number of days, as a test period. So this carelessness on part of the government It worked just well for this private company. In fact, by the way, Reliance Petrochemical exports maximum amount of refined petrol. So it tops the list of exporters. So one can deduce, or one can speculate, that they are always lucky. The government, this company is the apple of their eye. Anyways, so this was it. It's almost, if I'm to give the crux of the matter, I would say that the exporters are making merry because there are complementary policies that help them. Alright, bye.